By early 1944, German Naval Command believed it had finally found the explanation everyone had been searching for. For months, losses in the Atlantic had been growing at an alarming rate. Entire submarine patrols vanished without warning. Experienced commanders failed to return from missions that should have been routine. The numbers no longer made sense. At first, the explanation had been comforting. Allied air power had improved. Escort tactics were better coordinated. The enemy was adapting. But slowly, another possibility began to take shape. What if the problem was not what the Allies were doing? What if the problem was what Germany itself was transmitting? This realization did not arrive as a single revelation. There was no dramatic report, no sudden confession. Instead, it emerged gradually through patterns that refused to disappear. U-boats were being intercepted with uncanny precision. Convoys altered course before contact. Aircraft appeared at the exact moment submarines surfaced. Again and again, German commanders reported the same experience: attack without warning. Something was wrong. By the beginning of 1944, German naval leadership could no longer ignore it. For the first time since the war began, senior officers openly considered a possibility that had once seemed unthinkable. The radios might be betraying them. For years, German doctrine had insisted that short, disciplined transmissions were safe. Radio operators were trained to send messages in seconds. Encryption procedures were strict. Direction finding, they believed, required time. That belief had shaped the entire U-boat war. Now it was collapsing. At first, the realization brought relief. At least there was an explanation. U-boat crews had not suddenly become incompetent. Commanders had not lost their skill. The fleet had been seen. If radio transmissions were the problem, then the solution appeared simple. Stop transmitting. Orders were rewritten almost immediately. Reporting schedules were reduced or eliminated. Acknowledgments were delayed. Emergency transmissions were restricted. Some boats were instructed to maintain radio silence for days at a time. On paper, it looked decisive. In practice, it created a new crisis. U-boats were never designed to fight alone. From the beginning of the war, German submarine operations relied on coordination. Convoy sightings were shared. Patrol lines were adjusted. Wolfpack attacks depended on timing and communication. Silence protected submarines from detection, but silence also isolated them. As transmissions decreased, coordination began to break down. Boats arrived too early or too late. Convoys slipped through patrol zones unchallenged. Intelligence became outdated almost as soon as it was received. German command now faced an impossible dilemma: transmit and be detected, remain silent, and operate blindly. There was no longer a safe option. While German commanders struggled with this paradox, the Allies were not confused by the sudden quiet. They were ready for it. By the time Germany changed its radio procedures, Allied intelligence no longer depended on constant transmissions. Months of intercepted signals had already revealed operational rhythms, patrol habits, command schedules. The Allies had not been mapping messages. They had been mapping behavior. A submarine that transmitted regularly created a pattern. A submarine that suddenly went silent created a deviation. And deviation itself was information. Allied analysts did not interpret silence as invisibility. They interpreted it as change. And change could be predicted. HF/DF stations continued to monitor the airwaves, even when fewer signals appeared. Bearings accumulated over time. Patterns became clearer, not weaker. The system no longer needed noise to function. Germany's attempt to reduce radio traffic failed to produce the invisibility it promised. Worse, it created inconsistency. Some commanders obeyed the new rules strictly. Others broke radio silence when they felt endangered. Emergency transmissions still occurred. Delayed acknowledgments still revealed timing. Each exception created a new signal. Each deviation confirmed Allied expectations. The fewer transmissions Germany sent, the more meaningful each one became. German Naval Command attempted further changes. Wolfpack tactics were scaled back. Submarines were encouraged to act independently. Decentralization was introduced in an effort to restore initiative. But independence came at a cost. Without coordination, attacks lost effectiveness. Individual submarines struggled to locate convoys. Opportunities were missed. Boats wandered through empty sectors, arriving long after targets had passed. The fleet had traded visibility for blindness. Inside German headquarters, frustration turned inward. Officers argued over doctrine. Some demanded absolute silence. Others warned that the fleet was becoming strategically irrelevant. Orders contradicted one another. The system hesitated, and hesitation in war is fatal. Meanwhile, Allied forces adapted faster than Germany could react. Radio intelligence was combined with radar, aerial reconnaissance, and improved escort tactics. Even without transmissions, submarine movements could often be inferred. Surfacing patterns, battery recharge cycles, known transit routes. The ocean was no longer unknown. German U-boats increasingly arrived to empty seas. Or worse, many were destroyed shortly after surfacing, attacked before crews even understood they had been detected. Survivors reported the same bewildering experience. The enemy seemed to appear out of nowhere. From their perspective, the new rules had been followed. Radio silence maintained. Procedures changed, and still they were found. Only later did German command understand the full scope of the failure. The radios were not just compromised. The entire system of control had been exposed. Centralized command had made the fleet visible long before anyone realized it. Years of consistent behavior had revealed patterns that could not be erased overnight. Changing procedures could not undo accumulated knowledge. The war had already been mapped. By mid-1944, the Battle of the Atlantic was no longer contested. Submarines continued to sail. Crews continued to fight. But the strategic outcome was no longer in doubt. Germany had changed everything. Reporting rules, communication procedures, operational tactics. None of it restored the initiative. The realization finally came. But it came after exposure. The Battle of the Atlantic was not lost in a single battle or dramatic confrontation. It was lost through structure, through habit, through a system that revealed itself piece by piece. Germany did eventually understand the truth. Its radios had betrayed it. Its control had exposed it. And by the time that understanding became complete, there was nothing left to save.